Hi and welcome to the podcast. I'm Chantal Broderick and today I'm joined by Melanie Haydon, Director at Deliberate Practice. Mel, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So today we're going to start off by talking about emotional energy at work, probably something that a lot of people can relate to. So what we bring into meetings, the conversations, the teams, without actually realizing it, how does that emotional energy actually affect us?
So important because when we walk into a meeting, when we walk into a shift, an interaction, we actually bring with us our emotions, and often we don't realize that. So being able to be conscious of what it is you're bringing with you is very powerful, and we actually have a choice, which a lot of us don't use. And it really, it talks about it in terms of, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So last week I had a meeting with a client. There was two clients. One of the clients was running late, and I was sitting there with the client and we're having a lovely conversation. Everything was lovely, really nice. And then the person who was late raced in, and they had obviously been in a situation where they were in discomfort. They were very angry, and it was like the vibe of the room changed. So I sort of went, and they brought in this vibe of anger, and it was like emotions were coming off them. And I think about it sometimes like a big one for using metaphors. I think about it in terms of we're like a thermometer, in that we can feel, and depending on what level of emotional intelligence you have, how you feel it, we can feel the emotions of a room, but we're also like a thermostat. So we can set the emotions in the room. And this is exactly what this client did. They reset the emotions in the room.
Yeah, wow. And the thing with emotions is that they can be quite contagious, right?
Absolutely.
So as soon as someone brings in, and I'm sure that anyone that's watching this right now can think of a situation where that has happened to them, and the way that it makes you feel quite uncomfortable, and especially if you're in a corporate environment and someone's come in that flurry, had a bad day, then straight away it is contagious to the other people in the room. It's very hard to reset that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And some emotions more so than others. So anxiety is very contagious. So is excitement. So if somebody comes into a room and is really anxious and everybody else can feel that, then they may infect them as such. But same with excitement. If somebody comes into a room and is really excited about something, then other people can feel that. And what is interesting is that physiologically, excitement and anxiety are the same thing. It's only what we label it. That goes, if I'm really anxious about this situation, or I'm really excited, then that's a different energy that we give off.
I think it's so amazing that those two things are the same. Like some of those, the physical reactions of our body, the way that we react in both of those situations, they're the same thing.
Well, you know, it might be a butterfly in the stomach or that, and that can be excitement or that can be nervousness. So if we can be conscious and name it and then reframe it as well.
So when we think about emotional energy, and you just gave us a couple of examples, what are some other examples that we're referring to when we think about emotional energy?
Emotional energy is, if we think about it like emotional presence, and it's how well we can regulate or how dysregulated we are with our emotions. So being able to be aware, and look, there are it's the 6 simple emotions, and then the more complex emotions. But again, emotionally intelligent people can name them and can say, okay, well, how is this showing up for me? And is it a choice, or is this just an automatic thing that I'm bringing with me into a room? And it can make a really big difference, as we've discussed.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I think in particular, when we think about leaders in our business, so whether that be managers, whether it be the CEO of the company, so if we put it into the context of leaders, why is it so important that we understand emotional energy and also how we present ourselves, how we do walk into the room, specifically or particularly for leaders out there?
And if we go back to the analogy of a thermostat, leaders being in the positions that they are have a more powerful thermostat. So they can set the emotional energy in a room. And if they are consistently showing up in the same way, then that is then affecting the culture as well. So we talk about it in terms of whether it's tone, body language, the pace that you speak, what behaviours you show, and this will all impact, if it's done again and again and again, particularly by a leader, whether or not it's a psychologically safe environment, or there's a psychosocial risk factor involved, or if they are creating an environment that is safe and protective and supportive.
So are there some ways or methods that we can go about identifying if we're at risk of walking into the room with that kind of emotional energy? And I know it's particularly hard if you're an employee and you're noticing that from your manager. Is there any advice that you can give around that in regards to how do we identify and then how do we manage it in the workplace?
Yeah, great question. It's, as an employee, you can't control or change somebody else's emotional energy, but you can be responsible for what you bring in yourself. So one of the best ways of doing it is before going into a meeting or before going into an interaction, pause. Take the time, exactly that, take a deep breath and just say to yourself, what am I feeling right now? Am I being triggered by something? A lot of our emotional energy comes when we are triggered. So it's the fight, freeze, fawn, all of those areas. And like if it's a fight, for example, if you're triggered and you're feeling a bit angry, are you clenching your fists as your jaw?
What are those physical
clenching?
reactions?
What am I? So first question, pause. What am I feeling? How is it showing up in my body? Am I clenching my jaws and my fists? And most importantly, what do I want to bring to this situation? What energy do I want to bring? And that might only be a breath before you go in, but it gives you the power and the agency to choose what you bring with you.
And you made a really good point earlier, which is you can't control what other people do, but you can be aware of how you walk into that room and that emotion. And I presume that by doing that, by taking the pause before you walk in, you're actually going to be able to make yourself feel better just purely through that practice.
And again, it comes down to a choice. So if somebody is carrying with them emotional energy that is high negative energy like anger, then understanding yourself and what emotion that causes in you and choosing, it doesn't mean you don't have to process it, but maybe in that situation isn't the time.
But if someone would go through that practice that you just shared with us, I would imagine the outcome is that then walking into that space, walking into the meeting would feel safer. You just feel better off. Do you find that?
Definitely. And it means that if there is conflict, then it can de-escalate much quicker. It can also add to the psychological safety of the culture where people feel that they can speak up and be able to make the culture a better place to be in. So,
which is nicer for everyone that you're working with. Yeah,
of course.
So if there was one takeaway that you would give to people based on this today, what would that be?
Before you go into your next meeting, your next shift, take that pause and, as I said, choose what emotional energy you want to carry in with you. And afterwards, do a bit of an audit on yourself and see what the impact of that was. If everybody just chose one meeting or one shift, if everybody chose to make a decision as to what they want to bring in with them, we could have a much happier workplace.
Much happier workplace. And I've got to say, I'm sitting here thinking, and also at home, right?
Oh, look,
like
absolutely.
whole nother conversation.
We're
but,
just talking about work,
yeah,
but this carries across
right?
everything for sure.
Yeah. Wonderful. Mel, thank you so much for joining me
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you all for joining us today as well. I hope you got some great insights and takeaways and practical applications from our conversation today. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.